Good morning. Today is Thursday, July 4th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ronald T. Hardgrove, your host, and this is my podcast about the difference between being a true conservative and being an issues-based conservative and why it matters. And my podcast is made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, and Google. My email address is storytimes@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Ronald Hardgrove and on Facebook at The Drill. So I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican. I was taught by the left that I was a conservative because of where I stood on the issues, which sounded reasonable. But whenever I engaged a liberal in debate, I couldn't win. I soon figured out that the issues were a fallacy, that only appeared reasonable, but were in reality a trap. The issues were created by the left for the left. So, is there any way for a conservative to win? Yes, by redefining what it means to be a conservative. Instead of defining conservative by the issues, I define conservative by reality, and the reality is that the presumption is always made for the status quo. I change only when there is an obvious case for change. In this way, I will not only win, I will never lose. And the purpose of this podcast is to convince issues conservatives to become real conservatives and learn to defeat the left each and every day. So, along those lines, one of the ways of defeating the left is by defining your terms. When you're involved in an argument or a discussion with the left, you have to define your terms. If you don't, the left will define them for you, and you're going to end up looking like a fool. So, from the Ayn Rand lexicon, I've got the definition of the day, and since this is July 4th, Independence Day, the definition of the day is independence. Independence is the recognition of the fact that yours is the responsibility of judgment, and nothing can help you escape it. That no substitute can do your thinking, as no pinch hitter can live your life. That the vilest form of self-abasement and self-destruction is the subordination of your mind to the mind of another, the acceptance of an authority over your brain, the acceptance of his assertion as facts, his say-so as truth, his edicts as a middleman between your consciousness and your existence. No matter how vast your knowledge or how modest, it is your own mind that has to acquire it. It is only with your own knowledge that you can deal. It is only your own knowledge that you can claim to possess or ask others to consider. Your mind is your only judge of truth, and if others dissent from your verdict, reality is the court of final appeal. Nothing but a man's mind can perform the complex, delicate, crucial process of identification, which is thinking. Nothing can direct the process but his own judgment. Nothing can direct his judgment but his own moral integrity. Live and act within the limit of your knowledge and keep expanding it let's try it again. Live and act within the limit of your knowledge and keep expanding it to the limit of your life. Redeem your mind from the hawk shops of authority. Accept the fact that you are not omniscient, but playing a zombie will not give you omniscience, that your mind is fallible, but becoming mindless will not make it infallible, that an error made on your own is safer than 10 truths accepted on faith, because the first leaves you the means to correct it, but the second destroys your capacity to distinguish truth from error. In place of your dream of an omniscient automaton, accept the fact that any knowledge man acquires is acquired by his own will and effort, and that is his distinction in the universe. That is his nature, his morality, his glory. Any error, or an error committed by the man who declares that since man must be guided by his own independent judgment, any action he chooses to take is moral if he chooses it. One's own independent judgment is the means by which one must choose one's actions, but it is not a moral criterion nor a moral validation. Only reference to a demonstrable principle that can validate one's choices. So that's the definition of the day from the Ayn Rand lexicon. And again, the definitions are important because it's very easy for the left to subvert a conversation, subvert an argument by simply defining your terms in a way that is most beneficial to them and much to your detriment. So you always want to make sure that you define your terms, and this applies the other way too, is a lot of times the left likes not to define their terms because they want to keep everything nice and fluid so they have plausible deniability. Things, well, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that. So if you find that they're not defining their terms, you can go ahead and define them for them. So remember that one of the ways to win is you've got to define, to win, and not only win, but win all the time with the left, is to define your terms. So when I come back, I'm going to be, I got something that I found that is interesting regarding the left, the socialists, and adult children of alcoholics when I come back. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And so the laundry list. The laundry list, for those of you that are not familiar, are adult children of alcoholics thing that is kind of a description. They always refer to it as a description, not an indictment. But anyways, it's a description of what it is an adult children are all about, and ways that if you match a bunch of these things, then you can say that you are indeed an adult child of an alcoholic. So what I found fascinating when I was reading these things was that how many of them resembled socialists and socialism. So in the laundry list, they use the word we. We this, we that, we the other thing. So instead of using the word we, I substitute the word socialist, and I come up with the following. There's two laundry lists. One is called the laundry list, and the other one's like an updated laundry list. And I'm going to do both of them. So this is the regular laundry list. Socialists are addicted to excitement. Socialists are isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Socialists are approval seekers and have no identity. Socialists are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Socialists live life from the standpoint of victims and are attracted by that weakness in their relationships. Socialists have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for them to be concerned with others rather than themselves. This enables them to ignore their own faults. Socialists feel guilty when they stand up for themselves instead of giving in to others. Socialists confuse love with pity and tend to be attracted to people that they can pity and rescue. Socialists have lost the ability to feel or express their feelings. Socialists judge themselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. Socialists are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship. Socialists are reactors rather than actors. And that was the original laundry list, and now I'm going to go to the other laundry list. To cover their fear of people and dread of isolation, socialists become the very authority figures who frighten others. Socialists are rigidly self-sufficient and disdain the approval of others. Socialists frighten people with their anger and threat of belittling criticism. Socialists dominate others and abandon them. Socialists live life from the standpoint of a victimizer and are attracted to people they can manipulate and control. Socialists are irresponsible and self-centered. Their inflated sense of self-worth and self-importance prevents them from seeing their own deficiencies and shortcomings. Socialists make people feel guilty who try to assert themselves. And that was the other laundry list. And I got both of these by Googling the laundry list. So you Google them, you'll find the web pages. I think the first set I got from the Adult Children of Alcoholics website. And the second one, I'm not sure what website I got it from, but it's off of the web. So let's see, there's one that, attract people that can dominate others and abandon them, to cover the fear, they become very authority figures who frighten others. That was the one I was thinking about. To cover their fear of people and dread of isolation, socialists become the very authority figures who frighten others. Today, socialists have become the very people they used to laugh at and sneer at in the 60s. The 60s socialists were a very different animal than the socialists of today. They were politically represented by the Yippies, the Young People's Party, and which were called the Yippies, and the hippies, and they had people that were constantly sneering at and laughing at the establishment. And one of the things they laughed at the establishment for was that, and people in the establishment, authority figures in general, was that all these authority figures had a tendency to take themselves very, very seriously. And now if you look at socialists like Ms. Cortez from New York, you find that they are people that take themselves very, very seriously. They are the people that the previous generation used to laugh at. So I think that's kind of an interesting metamorphosis on the part of those on the left. Let's see. And socialists are reactors rather than actors. I like that as well. That's from the original laundry list. And although it may seem as though socialists are in control or in charge, actually they're not. They're always constantly reacting to something going on in the world. So President Trump's 4th of July celebration that he has scheduled is a classic example. President Trump comes out and says, guess what, I'm going to do X, Y, Z on the 4th of July to celebrate the holiday, and the left reacts to it and says that it is excessive or political, or it is that he's actually using it as a campaign, for his political campaign, rather than as his function as President of the United States. So using it for his candidacy, and that in your candidacy, I think you're going to have to separate the money from the government from campaign contributions. You can't run your candidacy on government money, on tax money. It's going to have to be from various types of contributions. So I think that's basically their point. But the thing is that they're reacting. And in a lot of cases, they are overreacting. But when I come back, I'm going to be reading a blurb from Rush Limbaugh's, it's from his website, but it's his, what do you call that? The app, from the Rush Limbaugh app, when I come back. Thank you very much. Welcome back. So from Rush Limbaugh, this was from yesterday, and it's a little blurb about the 4th of July celebration. I'm reading from it's a transcript that I read earlier. And here we go.
Rush, I want to ask everybody a quick question. Do you think the Independence Day holiday, the 4th of July, do you think it's a political holiday? You think it has political attachments? How can it not? How can it not? The Democrats are out there, quote, Trump is turning July 4th celebration into a political event. It's unfair. He shouldn't do it. It's never been done before. Previous presidents have never made speeches, unquote. What do you mean July 4th is not political? It is precisely a political event. I don't care how you define it. July 4th, what is it? It's Independence Day. It is the day the United States declared its independence and began the process of becoming a country. If that's not political, I don't know what is. And let me tell you what this is all about, folks. This goes back I forget how many years, but it's recent, like in the last 10 years. This is a Harvard survey. They found that images, patriotic images of, say, the American flag, fireworks, this kind of thing, the visual images, the graphics that are associated with patriotism remind people of Republicans. They promote Republican Party values, or, in this case, conservative values. That is what this is all about.
So this is an example of what I was talking about in the introduction, where the difference between being an issues-based conservative and being a real conservative. And an issues-based conservative like Rush Limbaugh is going to look at everything from the standpoint of he subordinates reality to politics. He's a conservative first, and then he filters everything through that, the prism of that. And he ends up being very reactionary. The left says X, so I've got to say Y. So if the left says yes, I have to say no. So he does pretty much the same thing here, even though really what he's doing is jumping the gun. He doesn't have any information or enough information to form an opinion or even an opposition to what it is that the left is on about or the Democrats are on about. So he's, like I said, he's getting ahead of himself. What he should be doing instead, you make the presumption for the status quo, so President Trump is going to go ahead and put on a July 4th celebration. As far as I know, every administration does a 4th of July celebration. So that's the status quo. That's what happens on a regular basis. So we ask, what's wrong with that? The left comes out and says, well, it's political. Well, what does that mean? I mean, of course it's political. It's a political holiday. What do you mean by it's political? Okay. And if they say, well, Donald Trump is trying to use this to his advantage or to try to promote his campaign. He's not doing this as a president, but as a candidate. Then again, it's like, okay, how do you know that that's what he's doing? How do you know he's not just doing his job as president? The point is, you keep asking questions. I'm not afraid to be convinced. No real conservative is afraid to be convinced of an argument if the left has a good argument. And they can convince me, in this particular case, that President Trump is doing something wrong, great. Because if President Trump is doing something wrong, I want to know about it. Okay? And I would like to see the president then correct his mistake. So, but the left doesn't operate in a reasonable, rational way. When you ask them questions, what they want to do is bully and intimidate. They want to use psychology and psychological tools and techniques in order to manipulate people and bully and intimidate them into going along with their programs. My interest is keeping everything intellectual, and the way I do that is by asking questions. I don't prejudge. I don't say, well, if this is coming from a Democrat, I'm going to have to be against it. You know, I come out and I have an open mind. Okay, you say that there's something wrong with what it is that President Trump is doing on July 4th for the July 4th holiday. What is it, and why is it a problem? And what evidence do you have that, for instance, he has two roles here. He's president, but he's also a candidate for re-election. So what evidence do you have that this celebration that he's doing is strictly for his benefit of his re-election and not for part of his job as president of the United States? Okay? And you continue to ask questions, and 90% of the time the left is not going to have any answers. Most of the people that you're going to deal with, your friends, your co-workers, your relatives, they are not going to have the answers for it. In which case, then you just simply say, you know what, when you get the answers, let me know. Have a nice day. Walk away. And one of the things you have to remember as a real conservative, a tie goes to the conservative. Like in baseball, the tie goes to the runner. In this particular case, tie goes to the conservative. Why? Because the left is trying to create change. The left is trying to create a movement. So if there's a tie, there's no movement. There's no movement created. I haven't joined their movement. So they lose. They're the ones with spit on their chin. I'm just hanging out. It's their job to convince me, not the other way around. But that's one of their tools or techniques or tricks, is trying to get Republicans to prove a negative, to prove themselves. And Republicans or conservatives don't have to do any such thing. It's not our job. We simply make the presumption for the status quo. We keep an open mind, ask questions, and if we're convinced that there is an obvious case for change, we go ahead and make the change. So, let's see here. Let me go ahead. I'll be back with my conclusion. Thank you very much. Welcome back. What? No. Where were we at here? All the way down. There we go. Who are the true conservatives? They are the people that understand that conservatism is not just a political but cultural as well. They are patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments instead of predictions, speak clearly and definitively, and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded, asking why rather than why not. They are consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. They are normal Americans. So that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thanks for listening. Happy 4th of July.